Evening, people, and welcome to BNR for another show of to reflect about the summer of change, the week of announcements. It's been quite the start. It's only Monday, and we've had officially Fabinho get announced. We've had new vice captains, new captains, even, and maybe it sort of sets up the rest of the week for the perfect week. Maybe even a Lavia week, but we shall talk about leadership. Shall talk about a few other things as well. But before we do all that, let's talk about the BNR reserves who are in the building as well. And maybe also, maybe like Avi was just saying on backstage, we're in good company tonight, in star company. Maybe the biggest star on Twitter at the moment with all his graphs and everything. So maybe he can explain a few graphics and graphs as well. Because all those scatters, I do know what's going on. Maybe so we've got the main man, Evan, in the building to explain. But welcome. It's a big welcome. We normally do a Sunday show, then we waste a bit of time, but there is no time to waste now. It's Monday. Every single day is a day of news. But before we get all into it, I must ask you, the guys in the comments, to like the stream, smash a comment, and engage. There'll be plenty of questions asked tonight, and we'll try to go through them as many as possible. But before then, it's a hello to the guy who's been busy driving from Las Vegas. 8-hour journey, Avi. How was the drive? And what's in that drink? Is it just tea or a bit of energy as well? How are we doing, my friend?
It's not alcohol, that's for sure. Just some water. It was good. It was good. Evan, the drive from Vegas through Reno side is always beautiful. Through Tahoe. So, on the way back, we decided to just pick up a car, rent a car, and just drive back. So, no, it was good, nice and relaxing. Listen to a few podcasts. Unfortunately, I had to listen to you guys waffle on last night. But I did join in. For a couple of minutes.
And it's a good job you lost reception as well.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting jutti from the missus. That's why I had to go. But look, no, it was a good time. It was a good time. Unfortunate about the result, but hey, we move. We move.
Brilliant result. Brilliant result.
Evan, how you finding your new found stardom? Lady on Twitter.
Fame killed all my favorite entertainers. So I fear I might be next. So but, it's good. It's good. Like
Evan,
you said,
fame can also get you into trouble as well. So please stay out of trouble. Yeah?
Honestly, the data grind is keeping me away from Avi because he has nothing. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So in a way, it's keeping me out of trouble when you think.
And
about
no,
it.
listen. But before we joke and get jovial, I just want to say, listen, big up. By the way, I know your grind. I know how passionate you are about your data and stuff. And it's not that I don't dislike it. I don't understand it in the first place. That's the problem. So maybe you've got to give me a 1-to-1 tuition this week and make me understand it. But no, I saw the Van Dijk stuff, and it's good to know that he's not lost any of his aerial ability. But no, big up Evan. And if you're not following Soccer God, you should be 100%.
Gene, how are we doing? You can also follow Gene as well. He comes out with plenty of stuff of his own. So don't say I'd never give you a shout out.
Plenty of rubbish from his account, but it's fine.
Yeah, look, I'm
No,
not,
no.
I'm not Asim. I don't want to be no ITK or anything like that. I leave the ITK business to Mr. Blue Chip, 0 out of 4 this summer, man's on a roll. Look, wait, I just like to talk football. That's all I care about, and that's all that bothers me. Yeah, these new bloody ITK business that these guys want to do. Good luck to them, man. But Evan, respect to you, man. I love your content. I understand it, unlike someone here, which don't understand football, don't understand the tactical side of the game, or can read a couple of graphs, man. So I respect you, man. You're smashing it, and definitely everybody, look, please give him a follow, man. The guys puts a lot of time and effort into this, and and this is what he does it for. He does it for people like us to actually try and break it down, so we can actually see who we can actually buy next. And I'm looking forward. I think we should speak about the graphic today in terms of the defenders that you feel we should go for next. Joe, just going by the graphic that you actually came
Evan,
up with.
can you bring it up and let's start with that? Why not?
Yeah, give me like 30 seconds so I can download it in a format that StreamYard will accept, and we'll get straight into it.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Avi, whilst Evan is doing that, it looks like our sort of main target, the one that we really showed interest in, our long-term target, Klopp's very own sort of a player that he really, really wanted. Levi Colville is probably going to sign a new contract. All those videos, we shouldn't really read into the videos that we see on Instagram after the experience that we've had over the summer with Jude Bellingham and a few others as well. But we like to do this. It sends the fans into frenzy as well over social media. But we have to maybe look at some realistic targets. Liverpool had a stance on him, and a clear stance that they were willing to spend the money on. They were willing to spend big on this sort of talent that would give him the best part of 10, 15 years going forward. But Chelsea also love him, and they consider him their own and as an untouchable. So he looks like he's going to sign a new contract, and Liverpool have to look elsewhere. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's done quickly that he signed a new contract. I'm sure, Pochettino, who's a very persuasive manager himself, and you've only got to look at the work that he did with the youngsters at Spurs, with Dyer, Dele Alli, just to name a few, that, once he gets his sort of markings on this Chelsea squad, and if they give him the time, he'll be a very good manager. And especially with the youngsters, we're talking about Noni Madueke, who's there. You got Chucky Kane from Villa, who joined last season, couldn't get going. So there's abundance of talent there. And Colwell might have thought, there's work to be done here. And he might have favoured Liverpool, but Chelsea have got money. They've given him a good contract, and he's probably felt that I'll stick around Chelsea for the foreseeable, which is fine. We move on. Obviously, links now, will intensify. The Inacio talk, the Antonio Silvas, Lukeba from Lyon. We've got to look at that kind of bracket. I don't think there's any set defender out there that's ready made apart from a Gavadiol. It will have to be like a project signing, not a project signing, maybe a little bit further down his development. But maybe like a look at Inacio, a Schotterbeck for Dortmund, but I don't think he will leave. But there's plenty out there. There's plenty of good options out there.
Okay, let's get into it, Evan. Well, can you explain to me, whilst maybe you can make it clear as well, because when Liverpool fans, just like myself, are sort of campaigning about a Liverpool that really need to go for a left-sided centre-back, it clearly, in more or less every game they were playing in back end, Robertson wasn't awful, Evan, but when we change the system, it's nothing against the sort of Andy Robertson as a player, as a person, sorry. But in terms of profiles, when we had the system, a more conventional 4-3-3, it allowed us to have really flying fullbacks. We were inverting Trent before then, but in terms of specifically Robertson, he was told to bomb on that sort of left flank. But now we need a different type of profile, a profile that is a bit more progressive in the first build-up phase, a bit more sort of conservative in terms of defensive traits, and probably someone has a bit more physicality in terms of sort of natural his natural characteristics, if you like. So all of a sudden in changing the system that we play, it sort of requires a different profile of player, and that's what you are going to explain. These sort of players that are on your graph now have those traits, and maybe something that Robertson lacks.
Yeah. First thing I just want to draw everybody's attention to is that this is I was looking.
We've lost you, Evan.
Left-footed center backs in Europe's top 5 leagues that made more than 25 appearances, so we could have a healthy sample size. This is the updated version because people wanted to see where Levi Colwill was anyways, as well as Inacio, who's outside of Europe's top 5 leagues. So they're on there. What I'm looking for, Asim, in a left-sided center back is obviously someone left-footed. I just think that kind of makes sense. And also just someone who gives us a different edge, because to be honest, even in this new system, I do think there is a certain type of game state where it makes sense to have Andrew Robertson as the left-sided center back. If you're going to have all of the ball and the team you're playing against has no ambition of scoring, you don't know what their type of goal looks like in that game state, then it makes sense to have someone like Robertson who starts, in the back 3, but the heat map shows that he's still playing as a left back by instruction at times. That being said, in a different type of game state, you want a out and out center back who can step into midfield, who can be progressive, but someone who's maybe more of a round peg in a round hole, if you would say. There's a ton of different ways to look at center backs, aerial duels. You can look at clearances, blocks, this, that, and the other. what I was looking for with these two metrics specifically, which is just defensive duels won as a percentage and accurate forward passes, I wasn't looking at aerial duels. I am a little less focused on that than most people when it comes to a left-sided center back for Liverpool, and that's mainly because Van Dijk and Ibu Konate are undisputed starters, and they are the two most dominant aerial forces at center back in the Premier League. Nobody really comes close to touching them. I think maybe one other player. So I think we can afford to cut a corner maybe when it comes to aerial duel percentage. That's why I wasn't necessarily looking at it with these players. And, accurate forward passes, if Joel Matip is going to be out of our starting 11, it looks like Konate is Van Dijk's preferred partner by Klopp. I think we might miss Matip sort of striding into midfield and threading the needle. We can think about over the years how helpful that has been in unlocking a parked bus, especially when the opposition is keen to mark players like Salah and Trent out of the game. If you can bypass the midfield line and break the lines and immediately find one of the front three from center back, more power to us. And then we can instantly go from what looks like a lethargic buildup into a threatening situation. So that was the thought process behind this. As you can see, Levi Colwill is just off the charts, but I'll remember that's 17 appearances based on the asterisk there. Liverpool would have had to spend upwards of 70, 80 million for a guy who made 17 appearances. That's not 17 full matches. That's not 17 90s. That's 17 appearances. It's just appearances in the Premier League. I would have been a big fan of the move, but you can't say it wasn't a huge risk. Moving down, Avi already mentioned him, but before I started talking, Lukeba from Lyon. He's exquisite on the ball. He's absolutely exquisite. He's left-footed. He's got some pace to him too. I will say I have looked at his aerial duel percentage, and it is below average. But again, based on what I've described, I'm willing to cut that corner because in theory he'd be playing into three, like I said, with the two most aerial dominant center backs in the Premier League. Schlotterbeck, obviously mentioned as well. He's not too far away. There's Gvardiol, of course, very close to the top. And then you have Arthur Theet. Working on my pronunciation with his name. I don't usually struggle with pronunciations, but it's a bit of a tough one for me. As you can see, he's also kind of like
Arthur, his Belgian is Arthur Thiete.
Is it French? Is it a French pronunciation? I think they speak.
He doesn't know himself. He doesn't know.
Yeah,
himself.
he's taking a wild guess. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Arthur. I'm just gonna call him. Hopefully, he's better than the previous Arthur.
Does he play more than 13 minutes? This Arthur?
Oh yeah. So everybody here except for Levi Colwill made more than 25 appearances last season. So we got a big sample size for these guys. So I'm a big fan of Gvardiol, obviously, but that's looking very pricey. Arthur looks great. Lukeba looks great. And Arthur, it's worth noting, although it's not shown here, he's much better in the air than Lukeba. So there are great Colwill alternatives out there. It's just a matter of are Liverpool willing to, maybe go for someone who's third or fourth choice on their hypothetical short list. But for those who are maybe a little unclear, the idea in these sort of XY axis graphs with two metrics, you're just trying to be as close to the top right as possible. Players who are closer to the top right score higher in the metrics. Players who aren't do not. So yeah, that's sort of my thinking behind it. But again, this is only U25 left-footed center backs. If Liverpool can make peace with someone a bit older, right-footed potentially, that opens up an entire new scope of players that I think are really interesting.
One second. What's the age of these Lukeba and Arthur? I don't really know too much about it.
I think Arthur's 21, and I believe Lukeba just turned 22. Don't quote me on that. All I know is that they're under 25. But yeah, I think in and around 21, 22.
I think Lukeba's 20.
Oh, is he?
I think he's young. Castillo Jr.
I think.
I actually, honestly, I thought the name above Cucurella was Emmanuel Abue from Arsenal. Remember him? I thought it's a bosse. So
yeah, but Gene, I want to ask you, Evan, and I agree to an extent with Evan that Robertson does a job even in the system, and he most certainly does, especially when we come up against a back five where we can create an overload on the left-hand side by going and letting Robertson be the sixth attacker, just like we've done in more sort of conventional setups. And he can most certainly do that because that's his strength, like we've explained. But are you not a bit concerned that if you look at the sort of the names on this graph, that generally speaking, the names that stick out to me, they're more centre backs / left backs rather than left backs, or natural fullbacks, fullback / wing backs, I should say. And this is where we are sort of struggling with in terms of Robertson. If you even see the Leicester game, where Evan says when we have the ball, we're allowed to have Robertson, but I'm still concerned as why do we need to commit an extra person that far forward? Because they can bypass our defense with one hoof, and you saw that 2-3 times with the Leicester game. And if you see Man City, they leave an extra man in the last line. If you see Colwill, if you see Arsenal, for example, they let Zinchenko go and they have a defensive centre back like Ben White stay in the last line. But we're trying to sort of get both left backs, fourth fullbacks, a natural role. We're inverting Trent, but still letting Robertson go. And I must caveat all of this. Robertson has done a decent job, but sometimes decent, if you really want to win the league, is not good enough. But does that concern you that all of these guys are generally centre backs rather than fullbacks on this graph?
100%. I've said it a few times. I've always wanted a left-sided centre back first over let's say a forward-thinking fullback, and Robbo's the complete opposite. Look, I've called for the centre back for a while, Asim, now, not because of just Robertson being the issue, simply because we just don't, our centre backs are just not reliable enough. Two are not good enough for me personally, and Kanate is injury sort of prone. And looking at the graph, I agree that what, most of these they seem to be centre backs, and it's an area that I have never been a fan of having. For Liverpool, the biggest issue right now is we don't even have a 6, let alone a centre back. So of course we are going to get caught more often than not. And last season we saw it so many, even look back end of last season, even when we were playing the box formation, there were games where we still got overrun in midfield. We just got lucky on so many occasions where we didn't concede, and that's what it was. And I just in transition we really struggle, and yeah, you can say that's more to do with the midfield, but Robert was really poor in the last 10 games. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It just wasn't good enough. I can accept it wasn't his position, and it's going to take a bit of time getting used to. But we don't have time for players to get used to any sort of position right now. We're going to have to start the season with our best sort of 11. And right now, it seems that we're not going to bring in a centre back before the first game of the season. So we're going to have to go with Robbo. He's an amazing servant to the football club. He's been brilliant. And maybe I'm going a bit too early on him, but he simply hasn't been good enough, and I still can't see him being able to play that role. And you can say, okay, I'll give you an example. The last game, we had Curtis Jones in the midfield. That gives us enough attacking threat as it is. Why does he need to go forward? If we're playing two possession-based footballers, if we're talking about control, we need a defender. We need him to sit, not go, because Trent's going to do the going. He's going to come inverted. You just sit as a defensive player. I'm not a fan of this. I know there's going to be times when we're going to play the 2-2-6. I get that. But we can only play that if you have a recognized 6, which I think we are going to buy, yeah? And I've never been a big fan of a 2-2-6, if I'm honest. I just think we're asking for it sort of thing. And if you don't have an unbelievable number 6, like when I say unbelievable, I mean Rodri level, then I don't see the point. Either you play the 3 centre-backs and you let the players go, or a 2-2, or you just don't play it and you play the centre-back. So that's my personal take on it anyway.
It's weird. It's weird, isn't it? I just want to come in and just say, like, even if you get your more out and out center back to play left center back, if Klopp tells him to offer himself in the final third the way Robertson still does, even in this new shape, then we're not talking about a personnel issue here, are we? And so much of the dialogue has been around what Robertson can or can't do. Again, kind of similar to last season, we're probably talking about a systemic issue, because there's just no way that Robertson is a bad player. Like, we just know that that's not the case. There's no way he can't do the role in what's required. We just might have some subtle disagreements on what our quote unquote rest defense should look like, which is sort of like a growing term. How does our defense look when we have the ball in offensive situations? I think this is equally as important as learning to defend better in transition, which was obviously a huge issue. But what does our possession setup look like so that when we lose the ball in the opposition's half, are we instantly able to switch into a secure shape? I think that's a really pressing question.
Evan, and I get what you're saying. With look, and there's other players that I've called out on the same sort of thing regarding last season. Of course, last season was an issue. We all know there was a lot of players that didn't turn up. My issue with Robbo was it was sometimes I felt as though it was basic defending where he made errors. And I know, look, Van Dijk, we know there's other players that made errors, accepted. But when I look at that third centre back position, I want somebody who is not prone to an error. And I saw quite a few errors. Even there was times where I felt as though his positional play was completely wrong. Secondly, his passing, I felt that his control wasn't good enough at times, and which is really, really weird because Robbo is one that his control is generally good. But there was times I felt his decision making in that 3-1 right, and the way his position in terms of how he played the ball was wrong. That is my biggest issue and biggest worry from the back end of last season. Look, of course, he's going to get a chance. He might improve. But I want to see a lot more. When I say improvement, a lot more improvement. And I get in terms of the structural issues, if it is a structural issue, if Klopp's telling him to bomb forward, you can't expect the lad to sit. But if we're absolutely if it's transition after transition after transition, we're getting battered, every manager will be able to see that. And Klopp isn't that stupid to say to his Robbo, you know what, keep bombing forward if we're always getting caught in the transition. Because it was plain easy to see last summer.
Avi, you've been very quiet. Very quiet. It kind of sort of concerns me as well when you're twiddling your thumbs with your. Is it like a little? Is it like a waffle machine? Is it a waffle machine? That should be your emoji. That should be your.
It's a stress thing, man.
It looked like a waffle machine. I thought it's your emoji. I thought it's your logo, the waffle chip. But Avi, you've been very quiet. Shed some light on it and talk about this comment from Jake. Robertson is a liability in the first phase of the build-up. What he probably means by this is like, you see Brighton. This system is all about creating overloads in the central areas, Avi. And any team that is, you sometimes see a centre-back or even a keeper, Alisson to an extent, more so with the Brighton keeper, more so with Edison, and he's been doing it in this preseason where he takes up a centre-back role between Diaz, either left of him or right of him, where he's enticing the opposition. The Spanish call it La Posa, is basically enticing the press. And can Robertson do that? Put his foot on the studs on the ball and just stand and make the triangles. Is that his strength? Can he do that? Can he be developed? Can he be coached? Or does his natural instincts really want him to just fly down that and be ahead of the ball? Because when he's ahead of the ball, he's an option for Trent. But do we need to rein him in? Do you think it's by design, or do you think it's just his natural instincts taking over?
Robbo's natural instincts, when we first signed him as well, there was issues with his defending, even at Hull. And we signed him and he didn't get, Moreno was ahead of him for the first 3-4 months until Moreno got his ankle injured, and then Robertson came in. And Robertson is one of those that he thinks attacking wise first and foremost. He will bomb forward first and, make the runs in behind, whether it's a Jota on the left or a Diaz on the left. Him being a fixated sort of left centre back in a 3, I don't think it works. We've gotten away with it, but like Gene, one of you mentioned against Leicester, Leicester had that freedom where they were just putting balls over the top and Daka was getting, clean through for the first 15-20 minutes. Then we came into our own. It's a very unique position because there's only one player that I've seen that can do that role. It's a Gvardiol, who can go forward if he needs to, and then we literally suck the life out of the opposition, just like City do. City would predominantly play with like that too, and then Stones now in that midfield area, and then literally be in that third phase against the opposition half. Can we do that? Yes, certainly, but then we're sacrificing the 2 men at the back, which is Van Dijk and Konate, and we've already talked about the overloads as well. Can Konate keep covering that right hand side when Trent is literally in that sort of hybrid of a 6 and an 8, just pinging them through? It needs work on. It needs work on Asim. Whether it's enough work before the Chelsea game, I'm not sure. But I expect him to start against Chelsea. Anyone that coming in now, I don't expect him to start or give Robbo competition for the first sort of few weeks of the season. So it is one that we'll just have to see how they play it out and see how they set up against Chelsea. But as a long-term option, no, because he's 30 now.
Yeah.
Van Dijk's 32 now, so they are going to be doing a lot of running if they want to stick with their system. So it'll only go and see what kind of defenders that what we're looking for. Are we actually looking for a left centre back? I'm going to chuck one out there. Can Joe Gomez play that role? As a temp. Temporarily, can he play that left centre back role? Is he more sort of, not I would say fluent? Is he more balanced than a Robbo? There's questions there to be posed.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
with all due respect,
carry on, Gene.
I can't see Gomez starting any sort of position like that. He didn't in the preseason games. He was playing right back. For him to start in any of that, that's just not going to happen.
Evan, you talk about the rest defense, but do you think Liverpool have a dilemma here that it's all about committing players forward? We commit too many and get caught on the break in transition. But don't you think we need someone a bit more conservative so it allows Trent to be allowed a bit more freedom? Because that's another thing aspect in here is Trent is a deep line playmaker, like Gene says. But in the third phase of the attack, we also want him to be in that right half space because of his crossing ability. So we can't have everyone to go forward and bombard the box, because who's going to defend? Because it only takes one ball to really bypass, and all of a sudden Van Dijk and Kanate are faced in 1v1 situations. And it's sometimes like, how many times have we seen that Liverpool are too easy to cut through, and you don't really need to work hard to structure attack. It's just one ball and you're in. But surely we have to gain some control here about if we're being linked to these centre backs, the left-sided centre backs. Is surely a coaching thing that the coaching staff recognize that it needs to be done, and it can only mean a good thing. But your thoughts about Trent? Because I'd rather have an extra person be conservative in the last line, but having Trent to go, because he's too good of a player to not to sort of have him on the edge of the box in the last phase of the attack.
Yeah, and I think if Trent is constantly busting ass trying to get back and defend, I think that defeats the purpose of inverting him in possession in the first place, right? Because although I think we can all safely say that Trent is not some generational defender, he's a good defender. He's good, but he's not a jaw-dropping defender. And that's exacerbated in the 4-3-3 by him expecting, like you said, Asim, to be a final ball creator in the final third, and then in transition he has to sprint back 80 yards and provide security in the back line. So obviously that's going to make his defensive performances worse, if he's just constantly tired. So the idea of him inverting and playing in a pivot partnership in the middle, you don't take defensive responsibility away from him per se. You just make those actions a lot simpler, because it's a constricted space. It's not a 1v1 against Wilfred Zaha, against Vinicius Jr. You know what I mean? Not a single right back in world football is going to come away from those situations looking good most of the time. So I agree with you in the sense that we need security in the rest defense, so that it's not on Trent just to be bombing back and forth all the time. Dare I say that the onus is perhaps on the left or right winger to provide that security. So let's say Robertson is pressing forward in this new shape, like he does, like he's been told to, apparently. And he overlaps Diaz. He overlaps Jota, whoever's playing left wing on the day. Perhaps I think it might be on Diaz or Jota to play the ball to Robertson and then maybe take a step back, because they now have to be aware that Robertson has just vacated quite a bit of space, and we essentially have like a back two, which is not dramatically different than the way it was in the 4-3-3. You think about the peak of Robertson and Trent's fullback wing play; they were both pushed up, and we were essentially relying on two center backs and Fabinho to provide security if it's just one hoof forward to a physical forward. So it's not all that different. It's a really, really complex question. How do you balance it? Because you need the width that Robertson can provide, and you need to sort of clog up the middle and occupy center backs, because this is a pressing issue. This is how 95% of the teams in the Premier League are going to play against Liverpool. So it's imperative that we master this game state. I would say the onus, like everything else in football, falls on everybody because if we're going to commit that many men forward, if we're going to be one of the two pure attacking football teams in this league, then it's about finding a shape in possession that doesn't exacerbate our weaknesses. I don't think it's about any one particular person. I reject this idea that it's about getting a certain type of profile, although, as I've shown with the graph, I have my preferences. It's about a collective thing, and ultimately that falls on the doorstep of Jurgen Klopp and the coaching team.
Just a quick one, Evan. On the points you've made, I get where you said, we want a lot more attacking threat, Asim, but for me, I believe we don't need Robbo to go forward go forward that much. We have so much attacking threat right now from the players that we've got. We don't need him to overload. We have
what I think Klopp would say to you. Sorry, Saj, to cut you off, but what I think Klopp would immediately counter if he was here is he would say, "Well, because I have all of that attacking talent, I need to draw some attention away from them. I need to open up the pitch for them, because it's cool that I have 3-4 incredible attackers in and around the box, but if I'm just putting them there, then I'm just sort of clogging the area, and there ends up being space for nobody. So you need, as we saw against Leicester, you need Gomez pushing out on the right-hand side. You need Robertson. And this is a principle of attacking football that I think any coach would agree with. I mean, you look at what Guardiola has achieved in the Premier League. It's all about wide triangles. It's all about wide triangles. It's all about making the pitch as big as you possibly can. And that sort of stands in direct contrast with what people think of when they think of like tiki-taka possession play, right? They think of 5 to 10 yards. But at the same time, you need to make the pitch big to get the most out of 5 to 10 yard passes. It's a weird paradox in the game. It's kind of confusing, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
But you mentioned Guardiola, Evan, and Avi, you can take this as well if you want. Guardiola, if Klopp is going to say, I need to draw attention to, away from the likes of Salah and get Robertson involved in the attack as a sixth attacker, then wouldn't Guardiola, who's using the same system, and you're right, he holds the width, he plays the same system, but a bit differently. He likes to have the width with Mahrez or Bernardo Silva, a bit more different, but Grealish holds the width as well. But he has played 4 centre-backs now. He leaves 3 centre-backs in the last line. So if Guardiola can do that, and they win the league, and they won the Champions League, and a load of more trophies as well that we can mention on here, if they can do that, and they are the blueprint that we should be going and sort of targeting, if they're doing that, shouldn't we take a leaf out of their book? And just to mention again, Evan, you mentioned that we had 2 defenders in the previous 4-3-3, the conventional 4-3-3. But in terms of the second line of defense had a peak Henderson, a peak Wijnaldum, a peak Fabinho. That was a lot of protection to the back line. So if your Trent and Robertson were flying down, they were covering the sides as well because they had legs. Now we have different technicians, we have legs, but it's a bit more positional. And if you're going to commit with 2 10s on the ball, then in transition, you're asking for trouble. So I think you're right. We're not trying to sort of lambast Robertson here, Avi. He's been a brilliant legend of the club and this and that. But sometimes
5 minutes, Avi, you crack on. Let's chat.
But Evan or Avi, you can take this. But in terms of our profiles, this profile is just maybe 1 or 2 pieces of the jigsaw. And you're right. I think Gina has made a good point that if we have a left back that is going to attack, then I think the next big piece in this is the DM. And we probably need a more of a natural destroyer, which goes on to someone like Lavia and segues into the next point that if Lavia comes in and he starts, then what difference do you think Lavia makes to this setup on and off the ball? Does he protect Robbo a bit more? Does he fall into the centre-back positions in structured attacks from the opponents? Does he snuff out danger just better than Curtis Jones? Surely it's got to help us. Avi or Evan? Nobody.
I was going to let Avi speak. I feel like I've been running my mouth.
You asked Avi, didn't you?
Avi, are you on a protest tonight?
No. I'm speaking. No. Yesterday was a great example. Some people are mentioning Ake. And Ake for Man City yesterday, he was bombing forward and he played as a 3. And then you had Carl Walker keeping in. And then John Stones was the 6th midfielder alongside Kovacic. And they were protecting that back 3. Bayern Munich played the same way as well, man, with Mazraoui at the right back, Alfonso, and they were pushing forward. And Kimmich was dropping back. I don't know who alongside was Kimmich, man. It wasn't Musiala. It was There's another one alongside Kimmich yesterday. Oh, it was the new boy Conrad Lima, and they were pushing forward, and it was a great game of attack versus attack. It wasn't like no defense. Man City edged it, but Aki's a great example because he started off as a left back at Bournemouth, and then slowly he's been transitioning to this left centre back role, and he plays it very well. He's got the physicality to play it. Whether Robertson can do it, I'm not too sure, but it's one of those, Gene. Because I know you're a big advocate of not seeing it. We've got to give it time. We can't judge Robertson off the basis of 12, 13 games. We've got to see how preseason goes, and I think Bayern Munich will be a great indicator of this, Asim, because Coman, Sane, Musiala, and that three, they'll go with Gnabry up top, and then you got Kimmich and Lima, who like to get forward as well. And then when we're on the offensive, it will be interesting to see how they shape up. Whether Alphonso Davies, because Alphonso Davies won't be that left centre back, it will be Kimmich who comes in, and Davies will leave a lot of spaces. And so does Mazraoui as well. They're great going forward, but defensively on the exchanges, they struggle getting back.
I think in relation to Man City, you already briefly mentioned it, Asim, I believe. They have the ultimate sort of get out of jail free option in Kyle Walker, as plenty of people have always described him as. Liverpool don't really have that in their backline. I guess you could say they have Konate, who I think is physically on par with anybody in the league, but I mean, you could make a case Kyle Walker's the purest athlete the Premier League has ever seen. I mean, he's just absolutely nuts, just does not seem to age, does not seem to ever slow down. So they do things differently, but you can see in a way we're trying to emulate them a little bit with the box midfield, but we have to put our own twist on it. And when it comes, I think just like my final thought on the whole, like what type of center back signing do we need? I think what's more important is the tactical side of it. My thinking, my desire for a new center back is I'm looking at the injury records of Konate, Gomez, and Matip. I'm not necessarily, I am looking at who they are as players and their strengths and weaknesses in this new shape. Absolutely. I am looking at Andrew Robertson and wondering just whether he can end up being a round peg in a round hole. But for me, all of my anxiety, and I think most of the fan base's anxiety too, is just around like, can these guys be reliable? Because as we know, there's, I don't mean to tempt fate here, knock on wood, but there's a chance that Matip and Gomez could be holding minor injuries come the trip to Stamford Bridge, and then all of a sudden we're down to two center backs. So yeah.
Asim, I just wanted to take this question. Robert Maguire goes, Man City were poor in defence last season. Their goals papered over it. To be fair to City, Robert, I felt as though that was when Kyle Walker was playing. When Pep changed it into actual four centre backs, their defence actually showed up pretty good, especially towards the back end of last season. And Kyle Walker wasn't even in the team back at that point. So fair play to them, Pep. And this is one thing that you have to respect, Pep. If he sees a change that needs to be made, bang. Like Evan mentioned, this Kyle Walker, one of the best athletes, was perfect for the system. When it wasn't working, he went out, bang, he changed it straight away, and it worked straight away. So you got to give hats off.
There's no guarantees that Walker will be at Man City at the start of the season, by the way, guys. There's always talk. There's already talk that Pep doesn't fancy him. That Rico Lewis, who's a great talent, easy. We talk about pace and get out gel card, like Evan mentioned. Rico Lewis has got pace to burn, but obviously he's still relatively young. I think this is why it's important, Asim, that Lavia does come in, because he's got the physicality, he's got the speed, he's got the recovery. He will be that ball playing sort of. The modern, back in the day, we used to say the sweeper role. Gina would remember. Asim, you were probably a little nipper. Evan, you were probably not even born. Lothar Matthäus, who was great at it at Dortmund, he just comes to mind. I don't know why. And Matthias Samar, obviously. Matthias Samar is brilliant. And these why I think we may be looking at Klopp being German. He may be looking at kind of like Trent and Lavia doing that role. Maybe not Trent so much, but Lavia playing that sort of third centre back role where Robbo can push on, or play that role where you've got the two pivots and then you've got Robbo, Konate, and Van Dijk, and just giving that extra added protection, because you can't play Jones and a Trent in a six.
I was thinking about what Avi just mentioned yesterday, because Lavia likes to drop. And I've seen from the heat maps, he actually likes to drop and invite pressure from the opposition. I know he made a mistake against Liverpool, and I mentioned in a couple of shows. He actually likes to drop and invites the pressure. Then and he's good enough to get out. That might be an option where he actually drops. You never know. But then again, Evan is right. If the Robbo is good enough, then it makes sense. But then who's going to be in the actual six then? We're back to 3 centre backs, but then who's the actual 6? Are we going to play ball playing centre
No,
back?
the six has to the six. If you want Lavia to do that, he has to do that from the 6
If he's
position.
yes, he's going to drop, but then he's going to need. I suppose Trent's going to be there, isn't it?
Trent
When
must be there.
when I wrote an article earlier this summer, it was about a different player, different situation entirely. But one of my main takeaways, and this conversation has reminded me, is that this new shape and this new way of playing shows how just little we know about it.
Yeah.
Because we have such a small sample size. What do we have? We have 12 Premier League games and a small handful of preseason. Like all 4 of us are like super well versed in the 4-3-3, right? Klopp's 4-3-3. We could all tell you what a Klopp midfielder in a 4-3-3 looks like. We could all tell you what traits the forwards need to have. We could all tell you what the rest defense looks like, what's important, what's not important. There's so many question marks around this new shape. And when people, I think, were creating lists of like attributes and like prerequisites that they wanted for a midfielder or a center back in this new shape, I said, in a way, we as fans have never been less qualified to speak on what type of player Liverpool need, because it's completely like uncharted territory. We can't just compare it directly to what City and Arsenal are doing, and we just do not have the sample size to confidently say this is what a left center back needs to be in this new system. This is what an advanced state needs to be in this new system. This is what a 6 needs to be in this new system. We really don't know. And I've tried to be like very low maintenance with the type of players that were like and when responding to the links, I should say all the links, some of these things, they just don't make sense. I'm kind of like Ryan Gravenberch, maybe I'm just trying to like be open-minded, because there's so much that we don't know about this new shape. And maybe after a full season of playing it.
Well, Evan, I respectfully disagree. Why? Because we've seen the blueprint in Manchester City. We've seen how Guardiola plays it. We're on the verge of getting this right. Why? Because we've got world-class players throughout our pitch. We've got a world-class shot stopper and a world-class distributor. We've got a world-class inverter and a deep line playmaker. We've got a world-class, the best defender in the world. We've got 2 technicians in McAllister and Soboslai who can play on the half turn and receive them in tight spaces. We've got Nunes who can play on the shoulder. We've got Gakpo who can play on the shoulder and the false 9. We've got the world-class Mohamed Salah, the chance creator, that chance finisher. What more do you want in this? We've got touchline wingers. We've got inside forwards. What more do we want from this team? We're on the verge. We're in the cusp of getting the perfection in this team through a DM midfielder
I agree.
and a left-sided centre-back. So
I agree. Yeah. Because like you just described like great players. And that's why I'm saying, like, when responding to this summer's links, I've just been like, okay, let's try it, because they seem like they're a good player. Like I'm in the past, if we were linked to a player, I could say they don't fit for these reasons. And I can say that with like a lot of confidence because I have a lot of evidence. But you've just named like great players with great attributes. That's all I really want at the end of the day. I'm not high maintenance. I agree that we are not. Here's one thing: you are never as far away from challenging as you think you are. Arsenal are last season's proof of that. So although we have a very sort of like tunnel vision perception of Liverpool, and we're still feeling the scars of recent title races and recent injury woes, we're still never as far away from competing as we think we are. And I agree with you on that point, Asim.
Look, and I want to come in on this as well. There will come a point very soon, whether it's the Bayern game or the Darmstadt game, that we've got to stop experimenting as well. We've got to have our set 11 ready for the Chelsea game. That starts on Wednesday. We've scored our free-flowing goals. We've had our, who's connected to my AirPods? We've played the free-flowing football. We've leaked goals as well. On Wednesday, Bayern Munich, make no mistake about it. It's a game where Klopp's got to know he's got to come round to his first 11 against Chelsea, and it won't be a game of 45 minutes and he swaps the next 45 minutes around for players. It'll have to be the 45 players in there. The first 11 players that start, they'll have to have about 60, 70 minutes on Wednesday, and then you make your changes. And I'm looking forward to it, because Bayern Munich will play. I know Tuchel comes under fire for being a very sort of a negative defensive first coach, but with this Bayern Munich team, he's got an array of players with so much talent, that can change a game within a second. He's got Koeman, he's got Leroy Sané, he's got Musiala, he's got Gnabry, he's got Matthias Tell who can come on, he's got the fullbacks, Alphonso Davies, Mazraoui, he's got Kimmich, and he's still got Pavard, who played at centre back against City. So it'll be very interesting to see how we set up. Whether we go with our kind of first 11. I know, the impending signing, you could say, of Lavia, he won't be there, but see how close we can get to that first 11 against Bayern Munich, and that will tell us a lot, like where we're going. Whether against Chelsea we go back to a 4-3-3 where Trent, there won't be no inverted, or we actually risk it and dare it and stick to what we've been doing with our principles in the last 12 games of the season. We're going with this 3-2-2-3 system.
Hey, I have a question for you guys, super quick, just based on what Avi was saying. Do you think the Bayern Munich game will be the first game of preseason where we see an 11 that plays for most of the game?
Yeah,
because we've been doing 111 per 45. Do you guys think we'll try to play it like a real game?
First 65, it should be. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
the first 65, we've got to play up. Yeah, and that includes Szoboszlai, by the way. I know Klopp's.
Sorry,
that makes sense.
Bayern Munich is a game that's the sort of level that we should be attaining to play our first level.
Yeah.
With Chelsea and Newcastle in the first 3 games, these guys are going to need tough opposition in at least one of the games where we're going to play. So I can see us starting with the let's say the best sort of 11 that can play. But no, in terms of Avi and what you mentioned, we're not going to see the actual Liverpool until we bring in the players, and that's the simple truth. If we bring in the number 6 and the centre back, we're not going to see Liverpool that we wanted, the real Liverpool that we want to see. And I get why fans, again, there's a bit of appeal amongst the fans, because the Lavia deal, we've known it shouldn't have. It should have happened before they got onto the plane. And I know there was money there to be spent. We should have spent it before, and we haven't. And now it's left us in a pickle because we're going into the season with arguably Jones and Jones as your number 6, and yet Trent inverted as the 2, which I'm not a big fan of, especially when the first. Yeah, I'd understand if they were playing against opposition, which were, let's say, in the bottom half of the table. But we're playing Chelsea and Newcastle in the first 3. We need to get these signings done ASAP. And I know a lot of people are saying Lavia is close, second bid's in, all that sort of thing. Just pray that it gets done in the next day or 2, and then at least he's got one sort of game, let's say the friendly, and then hope. You know what? If he has a decent thingy, the second game of the season against Bournemouth, I'd throw him in. I'll be honest.
Yeah, you don't want to be thrust
personally, because I just think if we haven't got a choice.
last thing you want to do is you don't want to thrust a Bajicic or a Lavia in against a Chelsea away first game of the season. You don't want to do that.
Maybe the second game against
Bournemouth. So who will be that 6? That's the question I want to ask you guys against Chelsea.
I think at the moment, Curtis Jones is favourite to start a 6.
It'll take like near perfection to do a Trent Jones pivot, just in the sense of on ball retention and stuff like that. Like, we cannot be losing the ball in dangerous areas if you want to play like that.
Yeah. Well, Evan, I think if we were going to see McAllister, a lot of people were saying and putting McAllister in their first team lineups to start on the first day, and I would have probably been happy with that. And probably, if you want me to be really honest, I would probably be inclined towards McAllister starting as a 6.
Asim, a question for you though: could we go with Trent in a 6, Gomez as right back, and play as a 4-3-3 against Chelsea?
The reason why I don't want that now is because we've been training for this system for a long, long time. Even in preseason, we've had 2 teams who've been doing it. Even Shimikas has been inverting. When you've had Gomez playing the conventional right back role, you've had Shimikas inverting from the left. I think we're all in now in this system. You might see variations of the diamond, the more conventional 4-3-3, Trent, Lavia sitting in a third centre-back positions, just because of how the opposition lines up against us. When their 2 8s or 2 attackers sit on our double pivot, we'll have to be a bit more mobile. And this is the reason why you need footballers in the pitch in those central areas, not to be rigid. And maybe that's the reason why Fabinho, I know his age and I know his mileage in the legs have been probably, and I know his 40 million offer is too hard to refuse. But we needed a beast, but we also needed a guy who can progress the ball through his passing. And if he can't do that, then he needs to carry it. And Fabinho in the last year to 18 months has lost that trait. If Trent is going to be really closely marked, then we need the other guy to be, versatile. And Lavia is going to do that in terms of his ball progressive runs. But in terms of... Yeah, carry on. Carry on.
No, I want to address this smart ass. Yeah, Damien. I do not understand the calm in our fan base. 6-7 players have gone. 2 good ones have come in. We are severely short. The season starts in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Neglect again. Listen, if Klopp comes out in the press and says, "Listen, it is what it is with the owners. I've got to buy in or sell what I bring in, and vice versa." Right? then I'll start to worry. But he seems relaxed. He's having a whale of a time in Singapore. I think they were up at 2, 3 a.m. last night at Lavia. I only know that because I know some of the Singapore LFC group. They were having drinks with the Anfield rep as well, with Gibbo and everyone. So if he starts, throwing his toys at the pram, then we'll start to worry. But until then, we've got to be calm. We do this every summer where we go.
Avi, but you have to understand where Damien's coming from. With all due respect to Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, but Gene, I'm not gonna worry about it now. Lavia should be done. Lavia should be done. Lavia should be done, and then we're waiting for a CB, and then maybe another midfielder if we can squeeze one in. But I'll be happy with Lavia and another centre back in.
Also, just want to say that
business.
even on the surface, if I look very calm and like devilishly
Lavia
handsome and
Swad.
all these things, inside I'm like internally screaming. You know what I mean? So appearances can be deceiving.
Evan, I'm exactly with you. He's just trying to be a smart ass, himself, acting all the Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Calm. He's dying from inside, really. Thinking, he was telling me that I can't say the word, I can't use that language on the show, but deep down, we all know where right now. Massively short right now, and man's coming up saying everything's all okay.
But listen, we are.
It's still the 31st of August. We're gonna give them till the 31st of August. Hopefully, bring in the players that we need, and we'll go again. But right now, we're talking about Curtis Jones in the 6th, Avi. That's all I need to say.
No, and that's fine. And he says 6, 7 players that are gone. Listen, mate, Naby, Milner, Ox last season. Maybe not Milner so much. Naby and Ox didn't offer us anything last season, apart from injuries and a wage.
Yeah, right? I get absolutely that we've lost more players than we perhaps expected to. Obviously, Henderson, Fabinho, but this idea, including the likes of like Ox, Keita, and Milner in like the argument that like, oh, X amount of players have left, we need X amount in. It's like, how many minutes played are we talking about with those three guys? I'm pretty sure Alexis McAllister alone played much more than the combined minutes of Ox, Keita, and Milner. So, although I agree we need more bodies, undoubtedly nobody's not saying that. It's just like if you're looking at the actual amount of minutes played, it doesn't add up at all.
Talking about bringing bodies in, Avi, it looks like Liverpool have taken a different type of approach in bringing youngsters, sort of hijacking British talent, because some may, and I think David Lynch mentioned in his article that Brexit is one of those factors that preventing Liverpool to go into other markets. But what do you make of this? We signed a DM on the verge of another defender from West Ham. You tweeted about the kid from Leicester yesterday, I think it was. Yeah. We've already signed that Harvey Owens, I think, from Wolves for 800k. So what do you make of this approach from Liverpool? And do you see this as a good thing? Because it's come out of the blue, this sort of going into the market, or do you think that we've already done it, that it just hasn't made headlines?
Yeah, I think we've been in trouble before when we've tried to nab youngsters from other clubs and got into trouble and tribunals and whatnot. But no, the Nioni, there seems to be hype about him. At Leicester, Amid Niala, who's the centre back at West Ham, and I know that we definitely interested in Daniel Da Costa for Sheffield Wednesday as well. He's a winger, a bit like a Jadon Sancho sort of type player. Not the Jadon Sancho that we're accustomed to at United, the Jadon Sancho of Dortmund. But no, it's always good, and Harvey Owens, who's come from Wolves, we paid, I think, 800,000 for him. It's always good to go for youngsters, but I don't want people to think that this is something out of the ordinary. We've always been doing this. We've been doing this for long as I can remember, from the David Amouz, Raheem Sterling's, Christian Nemes, we always buy youngsters.
Especially in the last 4 years, Avi, I've seen an intense shift. Like we of course you always do it. You point to Sterling, you point to other folks, but like it's been especially a focused effort, I think, to sort of bridge the gap between our academy and those of some of the high profile London clubs, because obviously London, so many advantages just in terms of population density. That's a city. I just looked it up. It's 16 times bigger in terms of population than Liverpool. They have access to just more young players. So absolutely, I'm absolutely behind. Let's go nab every insanely good 15, 16-year-old player from across the country.
And you hope for like a Bobby Clark to play. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, Bobby
like
Clark,
a Bobby Clark or a Ben Doak. You expect sort of one or two to come through out of a batch of like 8, 9. Because look, not every player unfortunately makes it, especially at academy level. It's a very ruthless sort of business. But the one that comes through, you hope is a Wolbia. When Sterling came through from QPR, you know, we kind of already knew that this guy would make it. But for every Raheem Sterling, there's an Adam Hamill and a Paul Anderson that don't unfortunately make it. So that's all we want. We want our academy players to come through. We want them to get developed at Liverpool, and then hoping that Klopp and the coaches do give them a chance. With Ben Doak, we're kind of seeing the fruition already. Got a taster of it last season.
Yeah.
He's playing well in the friendlies, and he could well be an option in the cup games. Especially in the cup games and Europa League appearances as well.
Well, Avi, what would you say to do you think, because some people are saying, yeah, we're happy with Liverpool doing this, we should do it, and we've shown a track record of bringing or signing players like Harvey Elliott and Bajitic that you mentioned. But if you go and look at someone like Brighton, because I see it as you bring a star for 40, 50, 60, 70 million, then you bring someone like this sort of approach, but a level above. Like you go bring a Mitoma, a Caicedo, go into the South American market and spend 4 to 10 million and turn them into a superstar. Do you think this is a level below that, where you have to spend around about 500k at times? Is it a safer approach that Liverpool are adopting?
I wouldn't say it's a safer,
in terms of finance.
Yeah, you could say it's a level below. I mean, I still find it baffling that we don't go out to South America. I mean, yeah, there's talk that we liked Kai said a few years ago. We liked certain players from the South American region, but we just never get them done. Maybe we got our hands burnt with Gerardo Bruno when we brought him from Real Madrid. He was Argentinian. We were told that he was going to be the next Messi. So I don't mind looking local, as in like looking in England, looking in obviously like Scotland and stuff, looking for the next gem. Ben Doak looks as though, without putting the markers on him, without, cursing him, he looks as though he'll be some player, and we're looking at a potential 60, 70 million pound player, and he's what, 17, 18? The kid's frightening. But yeah, I think we should have scouts all over Europe, not just South America, but Europe, and actually take punts on them.
I also think in an ideal world, Liverpool never have to go into the transfer market to get a significant player of quality and think, oh, he's homegrown. That's like a must-needed bonus. In a perfect world, Liverpool can just register players coming up through the ranks that are that are just ready. Like Trent, Curtis. These other guys. I think Liverpool are trying to avoid that pitfall that I think we've seen plenty of the other top 6 clubs fall into, of this guy that we're getting from this other Premier League club, he isn't quite worth 50 million, but we feel we have to pay it in order to tick the homegrown boxes. Obviously Calvin Phillips and stuff like that. I don't think Klopp and co ever feel like they have to go and sign Scott Carson just to tick a box. Ideally you can just internally promote, and you're internally promoting someone who has a future, someone who you can build with, because obviously even before the market became what it was in the post Pogba to United, post Neymar to PSG world, you were already paying such a ridiculous premium for homegrown players. Ideally, you can just create your own, even if you're technically stealing them when they're 15.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Arj makes a good point that he says, Asim, I understand that, but Liverpool, we need to win now. Brighton are totally 100%. Different club, different concept as well, where they can offer first team opportunities at that club. They can invest in the players, and 4 to 10 million might seem cheap, but it's still kind of expensive if you're really investing in someone like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But these guys are the creme de la creme that have been sort of picked out from that continent. But they, most importantly, offered first-team football at Premier League under a manager and a coach who knows, systems in and out. And when you put all that together, then you develop players like Caicedo and Mitoma, and, the list goes on. But Liverpool are a slightly different one. We can't bring someone for 4 million and expect them to sort of replace Mohamed Salah or Sadio Mane. We can bring someone like Taki and maybe, sell them on if they don't work out, or even a Carvalho. But in terms of first team opportunities, that's where Liverpool struggle.
We will continue to struggle because it's not our level. I think Brighton can bring in 4 or 5 players and they'll get a Caicedo out of that. We can't do that because we're Liverpool Football Club and we want to go for the title. We can't make these mistakes. We generally what Liverpool do, like you've just mentioned, that's the type of player we look for, like a Carvalho, like a Minamino, that sort of level. The fees, decent, low sort of fee players that have a bit of that we know even if they don't do well at Liverpool, we'll still make some money on them. And that's what we will do with my Ballon d'Or winner Carvalho and my Yeah. So, but look, I look. Yeah, have we taken a punt on a few of them? I think we should, because that's the way that's the way it should always be. A few players, yes, but to say that we're gonna go and bring a young player and throw him into the deep end, like Evan mentioned, we don't take any chances. Whenever we give a chance to a player in the Liverpool setup, that player 9 times out of 10 will probably make it. I say, like a Trent, a Curtis, a Harvey, a Doak. You can see they're getting their chances. The other players, they probably had a half, FA Cup games, maybe a few of them. And I know this is us when we were like the best team in the world, sort of thing, a couple of years. So the chances were going to be few and far between, sort of thing. But I just can't see us being able to do that. Maybe signing around the £30 million mark is the Liverpool sort of way, and not going up to the £70 million. Signing the £30 million mark is our sort of level where we can take them to the next level. The thing what I want Liverpool to do though is, when we reach, like, the biggest issue was when we reached the top, we stopped making them £30 million signings.
Yeah.
That was my issue. Rather than go and spend 5-10 million, we should have been signing the £30 million signings. Because if then these players go, there's a player that's going to be good enough hopefully to step in, and that's where our downfall was.
I'm surprised it's taken an hour to really start touching on FSG. Well, maybe, like I said, we've touched on FSG quite a bit. We can discuss it, but we'll need another hour. But Avi, do you think Evan mentioned the catchment area, and I understand that point, and it's a valid one. But do you think youngsters are thinking that they've got a better chance next door to making, Premier League football and making a name for themselves at Everton? That you think Liverpool have got a better team, better performing team, so they've got a better chance? Because you hear players like, sort of a Liverpool fan or was at Liverpool, got released and went at Everton and made it. But do you think that's true, that the players in Liverpool think, you know what, you better go there because you got a better chance of making Premier League football?
Yeah, and I think right now the way football is, especially in the Premier League with Chelsea and Man City and even Newcastle, Arsenal and Man United spending, we can't afford that time for a youngster, to do it. We need the numbers, unfortunately, now. So a youngster will always look at a development path and say, will I get into that Liverpool squad, let alone the first 11 or in the subs bench? Will I make that squad, week in and week out? Whereas if I go to like a West Ham or a Villa or a Brighton, which is a perfect example, or a Brentford, my path is clearer, and then work yourself up for a big move, like Caicedo kind of doing. Poor fella can't catch a break with going to either like Arsenal or Chelsea. So, there is that one thing, but you know what? We've never had luck with South Americans, Asim. I go back to the days of Mark Gonzalez, Gabriel Paletta. These guys couldn't even catch a work permit, let alone play for us. There's Anderson Arroyo and so many youngsters that just came from South America. Alan Rodriguez, talented left-footed. He was supposed to be talented. He had like 8-9 loans, and we still couldn't get a loan for him. Sebastian Leto, we had to let him go to
Leto
on loan for 2 years, and he still couldn't get a work permit. So I don't know what it is. We get really bad luck. And even Lucas Leiva had to spend an extra year at Gremio before we pulled the plug on him.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
Cortez, Olivia mentions Cortez as well. And there was a comment here saying, the agents are the thinkers, and Tiki Mink says, no, the academy is terrible. So Liverpool just must have shit youngsters at the moment. So
I would be curious to see if you just go back to, like, let's say the year 2000, just this century, how many like Premier League appearances Liverpool academy graduates have versus Everton academy graduates. I still don't think Everton academy graduates would have more. If that makes sense. Yeah, hey, yeah. See, you're getting some insight into my thought process. That'll be $10, by the way.
We have to touch on the new sort of 5-6 players that are leading the leadership. I was going to call it a quartet, but it's a few more than that. The leadership base has been updated. Today we saw the news of Van Dijk and Trent leading us to a new chapter, boys. Surely it must be a good thing, Liverpool. And I thought, you know what? Surely Klopp can't be telling him on a public training session. But it looks like that was the moment that when Trent got told. But maybe it was one of those thoughts. Maybe he saw something in Trent. But we'll start with Van Dijk because he's the captain again. And you probably think, Gene, it was a natural progression that this guy was a leader. He's vocal in the back line. Some people give him, I think, a few Dutch legends criticized him for not being vocal enough, not being a leader, especially during that World Cup, leading his Dutch national team. But we see a leader in Liverpool in Van Dijk. He's definitely a leader on and off the pitch for us. You're smirking. It looks like you're going to come for him, and you're not happy with the decision. But give me your thoughts in Van Dijk being named the captain of Liverpool Football Club today.
The truth is, I'm not going to say that I agree with the Dutch legends. I see a point that I don't look. People, captaincy is different. If there's different ways of leading on the field, I know some of Jordan Henderson was one of the most vocal ones. Other players are different. Who don't even need to speak. They just lead by example, just the way they play the game. I watched, watching Van Dijk. He has the attributes and he's a brilliant leader. Don't get me wrong. He's a brilliant leader. He's been an amazing servant to Jordan Henderson when Jordan Henderson hasn't played and all that sort of thing. But I wanted somebody with a bit more aggression, Asim, if I'm honest with you. I know there's not many players out there in Liverpool and this is another thing, and I mentioned in the other show, that I wanted somebody who's at the peak of their powers. And last season with Van Dijk, he wasn't at his best. He's 32. Look, I get everything why he's going to get the captaincy. Let me get that out there first.
Who is at the peak of their powers?
For me, look, I wanted at the time, I thought, because if Salah's going to go, so he's out of the equation. We all deep down know, maybe not this year, the year after, it's time to go. And I called it out on the show a couple of weeks ago. I wanted Alisson to be captain. And I know everybody can say he's a goalkeeper, he's all of that. He maybe doesn't speak the language as well, all that sort of thing. I wanted Alisson to be captain.
Well, surely that's important, Gene. If you don't speak English enough, generally speaking, you need to communicate on the pitch.
He's a different type of leader, though. Alisson is a different type of leader. Van Dijk, look, I'm not going to knock his leadership qualities here, and I feel probably be a bit stupid saying this, but I'm going to butcher this here. I'll be honest, but I just believe Alisson should be the captain. Let me just put it that way. I believe Alisson should be the captain of Liverpool Football Club. But I've got no problem with Virgil van Dijk being the captain and Trent being the vice captain. Let me get that out there. I just wanted, and another thing is when I see Alisson, the way he speaks, the way he conducts his interviews, the way he just there's no sugarcoating anything. He says it exactly how it is, and I can see that he would demand so much more from these players. That's what it is. Anyway,
Evan, when I think of keepers as captains, I think it's kind of sort of fashionable, if you like. I can remember the days of Casillas and Buffon waffling coming on.
Oliver Kahn, maybe.
Oliver Kahn.
Yeah.
What do you see? What do you make it?
Barthez was captain as well for France as well.
Yeah, I mean it's not a foreign concept, like keeper's captain. Here's what I will say about the captaincy debate. When you're looking at a leadership core, you have Mohamed Salah, you have Andrew Robertson, you have Virgil van Dijk. There's 3 international captains right there. You also have Trent Alexander-Arnold, and you have Alisson, amongst others. Choosing or debating which one of those should be captain for Liverpool is kind of just like, oh no, my diamond-studded shoes are laced too tight. That's just kind of what, because it's just like, are any of those bad options? No, any of those would be a straightforward option for almost any other club in world football, right? Mm-hmm. And what I will say is us on the outside trying to weigh in seriously, incredibly on who should be captain. It feels kind of like an almost pointless exercise, because keep in mind 90% of Klopp's choice, I would imagine, would be dressing room impact, dressing room intangibles. That's why Jordan Henderson had the armband. Don't get me wrong, Henderson was vocal on the field as a captain, and that was certainly part of it. But it's all about the behind the scenes sort of impact, which is something that we, even with our inside training videos, will never ever be able to measure into some sort of quantifiable value, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think obviously we shouldn't blindly trust every decision, but I think we're well within our comfort zone to blindly trust this one.
Avi, the captain these days needs to find the new players a house when they come into the club. So Van Dijk is going to need to find a house for Lavia very soon. Maybe he can rent one of his own properties to him. What do you think?
I think it's a great choice. I think the Klopp and Van Dijk, we know the relationship. He was heavily quoted by Jurgen Klopp. VVD sort of rejected Chelsea and Man City to come to Liverpool. He was sold on the project. On the top of the Blackpool Tower. So they've got that relationship. he's got that leadership skills. He's got that aura. But if anyone needed a big season, an up and coming big season, it's Van Dijk. And I think it's the perfect tonic for Klopp to give him that armband. And I think it's even a better decision to give Trent the vice captaincy, because Van Dijk's what, 32 now? You know, how many years has he really got left at the very top, you know, before we start having to rotate him? Maybe another year and a half, you know, once he hits 34, and Trent he's 24 years old. By the time Trent becomes a full-time captain, he'll be 25, 26, entering his peak. Again, another frightening thought. So I think it's I think the process has been great. Of course, notable mentions: Ali. Why wouldn't Ali become captain? Great choice. Salah. Why wouldn't Salah become a great choice? You know, look at the way he leads from the front. You know, look at the way he sort of inspires us throughout a game. He can hit a winner and, you know, just inspires the crowd. But Van Dijk, definitely a good choice. He probably was my first choice as well.
Yeah, but Avi, you touched on, like, you know, the transfer policy. Klopp sort of seems very relaxed in the presses and, you know, generally in front of the camera. So if he's made this decision, it's not one of them where Guardiola, I think, made one when he named, I think, Fernandinho captain of the City, where he asked the squad and they chose him. This is Klopp's decision, and he shared it with everybody else officially today. So if he's made that decision, we have to trust him. We've trusted him in everything else, and we should trust his call when it comes to making his decision for the captain of the club. But also sort of going on to Trent, that this, I think it suits the duo as vice captain and captain is really, really suited to the sort of future of the club as well, where we've got the captain for the present, and but also we're nurturing and shadowing the vice captain under the sort of leadership of Van Dijk. He'll have his own style when he takes over, but we're developing the natural successor and the guy who actually gets the sort of culture of the club as well, who's been through the ranks of the club as well. So I like the sort of contrast between them, and I think it will bring a different vibe to Trent's play on and off the pitch as well. He says all the right things in the presses. Whenever you hear him speak, you think this guy is a future captain of the club. And I think this is just another step in his development. And I think you'll see a different Van Dijk, and you'll most certainly see a different Trent, because even I think Henderson's body shape and him sort of getting chiseled throughout the pre-season made the headlines. But I think Trent didn't get enough sort of credit for him coming back early from Trent. And I think Trent is leaner. I see Trent is leaner, maybe because of his haircut, but I don't know. I think he's definitely leaner because I think he realizes, just like everybody else, that there was a massive, massive drop-off in the level of performances last year. This is a big season, and him getting that vice captaincy, him getting that official responsibility that has reflected his responsibility on the pitch, I think you'll see him reflect it off the pitch as well, and you'll just see him really go onto the next stage.
You bloody love giving us a eulogy, don't you? Huh? On and on and on and on.
Yeah, the guy gives
I didn't know when he was going to stop. He's done the show for tomorrow now, don't you know?
We know what? Can I go?
No,
Can I go on? Can I get an extra 10 seconds?
I blame the lad, man. The guy said, you know what it is?
He still needs extra time.
I need extra time. I need extra time.
When he gets
Because
a
it's
minute,
been 1 hour 13 minutes, Gene. It's been 1 hour 13 minutes, and I've not asked people to subscribe because I've been enjoying the show so much between me, Evan, and Gene, and the waffle chip has been twiddling his thumbs with a waffle machine.
It is literally a waffle. It's so funny. It's so on brand.
It is a waffle. That's your logo. That is your new logo. But honestly, but in terms of liking and subscribing to the channel, guys, I think we're on the cusp of 5,000 subscribers. Please get us over that line, and we've got so much more coming for you in the next, years to come, because we're not giving up. BNR is here. BNR is here to stay as well. So please get us over the 5K milestone, because we might even do, like I said, a bit of a giveaway as well. But is there anything else to discuss, Avi? Anything?
No, I think you've bloody covered it all.
halfway through his speech, I was thinking, good luck with that one, Abby. I've already lost my train of thought.
Yeah. How do you better it, right? How do you better it? But listen. Look, all on,
You put on the thing your Barella links, yeah. We can't go by without talking about my Mr. Barella. You put it on there, so when I talk about it, people are asking.
Okay, Barella, I think that's one of your players, Gene. You want to take the lead on that?
Look, I'm not going to speak about Barella because everybody knows what I think of him, yeah. And I just, the links that we saw come out today about Barella is just a load of tosh, if you ask me. We ain't signing Barella when we need a centre back, and we need a centre back and 2 6s, or 2 centre backs and a 6. So all these Barella links are a load of waffle.
Thank God Asim ain't doing the negotiating for these players. You're gonna bore them to death.
I mean, it'd be slower than Liverpool right now. It could be signing Lavia after September.
No, you would be talking after the 31st of August. That's what you would be doing.
And it's a good job you're not in the negotiation table. You'd go in there, walk out, Ringo's boys, it's done. Next tomorrow, Fabrizio Romano, he signed for Manchester United. We've been ringing Abby, where the hell are you? No reception, nothing. Boys, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back.
But the roller is the roller. No, it's great. No. You know what? To be all honesty, all jokes aside, you did put it perfectly. I don't know what you said, but whatever you said, it was perfectly.
But yeah, I think it's been a cracking show. We'll see what the new chapter has for us. Or I think Bayern Munich. We've discussed Bayern Munich. The game after Bayern Munich, when is it? Is it on Sunday?
It's on a Monday, I think, isn't it? Darmstadt. Is it on a Monday?
Monday.
Is it on Monday?
Is that at home game? Are we at home? No, we're not.
Yeah, we are. That would be Monday, 7 p.m. UK time.
There we are. And what's the American time?
That's 11 a.m. Literally my favorite kickoff. Let's go.
Not bad.
I think Ard has said 3-4 times. Listen, you shouldn't trust what comes out of my mouth anymore. Just keep listening to Twitter. As soon as Joyce drops it, I'm sure he'll be a Liverpool player. But I think it's a close one.
Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, guys. Thank you very much. That's the wrap. Have a good night, and are we doing a show tomorrow, guys? We decided around about 2:00 in the afternoon.
I think you've covered everything. I think you've covered everything for the week, Asim.
You never know.
You've even covered the post-match reaction show for the Bayern Munich game. That's how great you are, man.
Oh, Abby, you're such a.
You know what? I'm just glad Abby has found his voice after 1 hour 20 minutes. The guy was on a protest. He was in the naughty room. When he gets tactical, Evan.
I'm out of my depth. I'm very happy to confirm that all is out of my depth. When we start talking about analytical data, graphs, and shows, no, that's not me. It's not me. I'm good on Excel though. I'm very good on Excel.
Well, then it should be right up your alley, because that's half the battle right there, my friend. Should be right up your alley.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, guys, that's a wrap. Good night. Peace out and take care. We see you soon.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.